Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a great show for you today. It has been a weekend. There's been so much news, so much stuff that we really don't have time to cover it all in today's show, and we will be covering it a little bit later down the line. But remember, before we get too far into it, that if you would like to leave a tip or donation, be a bigger part of the show, all you need to do is go to streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. Anything you do, we really appreciate. But like I said, we have a big show for you today. We're going to start off with debate that's been brewing a little bit since this weekend. On Saturday, there was a court storming event that went a little wrong for one of the biggest stars on one of the biggest programs in America. In a couple other segments, in some other segments further down the road, we're going to be talking about the Cubs offseason as we continue our coverage of all 30 MLB teams. They made a big move earlier in this weekend. We're also going to talk about the Rookie of the Year race between Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. It's kind of been back and forth. We're going to talk about a little bit both seasons that they've had, and then we're going to finish off the show talking about the running back market that is really shaping up to be interesting with some franchise tag news coming up just earlier today, actually. But let's get into this first segment, which is going to have to do with NCAA court storming. We're going to start off right there. We'll set the scene. The reason that this has been such a debate is because Kyle Filipkowski, the star on the Duke Blue Devils, 8th ranked in the nation team, was hurt after Wake Forest beat them and their fans stormed the court. You go watch the video back a couple times. I'm not going to speculate on any injuries. I haven't heard anything that's come out about it, but it doesn't seem too bad, thankfully. But it sparked a lot of debate, along with the incident with Caitlin Clark earlier this season, where she was almost hurt in a court storming incident when they lost earlier in the season. There's two sides to this issue, right? The first side wants to talk about player safety. It wants to talk about this is dangerous, not just for players, not just for coaches, not just for staff of the team, but also for the people that storm the court itself. There's been many different incidents of injuries to both players and students and people that storm the court. There's been some serious injuries in that as well. But on the other side of the other side of the coin, you have the tradition, the aspect that makes college sports, and that's the ability to do stuff like this. You don't see stuff like this in professional sporting events, ever. You never see, in the NFL, a bunch of fans storm the field after a big win over your rival, or after, you win your first game of the season against an improbable opponent. You don't see this happen, ever. And it's something that makes college sports really special, is the environment around it, the environment that this is not just something that happens, but is kind of expected to happen every once in a while. Like, they know before the game if there's going to be a court storming if the other team wins. That's widely talked about. This isn't something that just happens on a whim. This is something that is in the air. You can feel the electricity. There has to be a certain passion for fans to rush the court. And if only one person does it, then he's going to get caught, arrested, whatever's going to happen to him. But if everyone does it, it's a different story. Some of the most iconic plays or moments in college sports history are followed up by or include court stormings or field stormings. Obviously, one of the greatest broadcasting calls in the history of broadcasting calls, the band being on the field and them scoring that game-winning touchdown. It's moments like this that live in history because just like so that would have never, that moment right there, that game-winning touchdown, that's not going to be a national story, a national uh, memory for everyone if there isn't this field storming. You go back to a couple seasons ago when Tennessee beat Alabama. They took down the field goal posts and took them out of the stadium onto the river. There's just so much magic in a court storming. And the people that are saying we have to ban it, I'm convinced don't understand. Now, maybe this is a little bit of me being in in college right now, and you know having experienced stuff like this myself. Being in the moment, it's one of the most magical feelings when you're part of that crowd. But I do understand that there are risks and damages, risks of being hurt, not just to the players, but to themselves. But this has never been an issue until someone big got hurt. And obviously that's how it goes with everything. You can do it until something too bad happens. And I've heard a lot of takes, both for and against court storming. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because I think this is a really interesting really interesting debate, I guess, because you're taking tradition against safety, right? Against the safety of these players and everything like that. But it's such a strong tradition. Like, they know they have plans in place to help players get out of here when court stormings happen. It happened that Wake didn't do a great job of protecting the players. But this is something that can be prepared for, and it can be done in a relatively safe manner. There's not a million, but there's dozens of court stormings every single year. Every single year in college sports, there are dozens of them. And you only hear about the bad ones, right? They're few and far between, and that's because you can be prepared to handle this. Like I said, this isn't a spur of 99% of the time. Storming the court is not a spur of the moment decision. Storming the court isn't, hey guys, I think we're going to win. I think we maybe should do this. This is something that is known well in advance. You can prepare for this. If it's a big game, a game that's big enough for your fans to storm the court. If it's going to be that. And you can put stuff in place, even just to be safe in these situations, because you never know what's going to happen. Especially a team, going back to this Duke-Wake Forest situation, Wake Forest is a solid team. They've played these teams tough in the past. There's no reason why they shouldn't have been prepared for this. And it's unfortunate what happened, that a player got hurt. But there's so much magic in a court storming, I can't get behind banning it. I can't get behind the people that want to destroy a tradition like this because of a I won't say a million, once in a season thing that happens. And it can be fixed. You can put some regulations on there. You can beef up security. A court storming isn't something you can control, right? Because that goes against a court storming. You can't say, all right, guys, we're going to storm the court in 5 minutes. Let's let the players get out first. It takes away from the magic of it. The magic of the moment is you're so excited that you have to go celebrate with everyone on the court. It's something that you can work to increase safety of these players and coaches without killing the tradition or the magic of those moments. It's really simple to do. So for the people that are staunchly against NCAA court storming, I would love to hear your opinions. I really would. I'd love to hear the other side of why. Because most of the other reasons that I've heard are players can get hurt. Fans can get hurt, which is true. But there's another way that you can protect these players without ending court storming as a whole. It really would be a shame if court storming was banned, field storming was banned. It's one of those magical moments that really is beautiful to experience. It really shows the passion in these fan bases, how big of a moment it is for them to beat this team. It really drives home that underdog mentality that a lot of teams have in college. It really drives home how big of a moment it was that this just happens. When a court storming happens, it lets the moment breathe. It lets people really take in the whole thing. How big of a moment it is for the program as a whole. It's something that I don't think they should ever get rid of. Not that I think they really could ban it, because it's already not allowed. You're not supposed to storm the court. But I think they can always beef up security in the moment that they know or have a feeling that it might happen. Because like I said, you always know. You always can beef up security and be a little more prepared. But I'm all for court storming. I think it's a great thing. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to cover the Chicago Cubs offseason. It was a bit of a quiet offseason, but they just made a big move earlier this weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that, what their outlook is looking like for next year. We also will, in future segments, cover the NFL running back market and talk about the the Rookie of the Year race in the NBA. So stick around. We've got a great show for you. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows are 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking through that break. Like I said, we are going to be covering the Chicago Cubs offseason in our continuing series, MLB Offseason Files. This is going to be part 3. We've talked about the Nationals and the Yankees. You can go check those out on YouTube. But if you're just joining us, you missed a good segment. We just finished talking about the court storming debate here with the most recent incidents of this season and the weekend. Talked about whether or not I think it's good. What are some solutions we could have? Yeah, that's what you missed. But remember, before we get too far into this segment, you can, if you want to be a bigger part of the show, you can leave a donation or a tip by going to streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. Again, you leave a message and a tip, donation. It'll scroll across that screen. You'll be famous for a second. We'll have a little conversation. You can go to streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. Without further ado, let's just get right into the MLB offseason files, Part 3, the Chicago Cubs. Chicago Cubs, by a lot of people's metrics, had a disappointing offseason from where they were a season ago. The Chicago Cubs are a team that were fighting for a wild card spot at the end of last season. They were kind of surprisingly good. They obviously missed the playoffs, but the the tear they were on in the beginning, they were actually buyers at the deadline. They had huge turnarounds from guys like Cody Bellinger, who, big news, has just re-signed with the Cubs over the weekend. And outside of that, the Cubs, they really didn't do much in the offseason. The Chicago Cubs kind of sat down and failed on a lot of their goals. What they were trying to do is they were trying to go get Shohei Ohtani. They were trying to get Yamamoto. They were trying to get these big free agent. They were trying to get these big free agents, and they failed. They didn't really get anyone in this offseason. You know, they just ended up losing the offseason, losing their big fish. They were second place in a lot of it, third place even in some. Now, 3-year, $80 million deal for Cody Bellinger to return to the Cubs, who had finally, come back from a frankly disappointing fall off since he won the MVP. Outside of that, the Cubs really didn't do anything. A team that adding Bellinger back really helps them. It makes them back into contenders again, or I guess playoff contenders. I won't go as far as saying that they are World Series contenders, because they did lose some guys. They lost Marcus Stroman, pitcher. They lost Candelario, who they had traded for, no longer on the team. There's a bunch of people that they lost, and they kind of sat put. The Central isn't the strongest division. It's a division that they can win, really. But outside of Cody Bellinger, they didn't really do much. Coming off a season that really was solid for them. It just kind of is a disappointing offseason for a team that needed to make a couple moves. So, that's what the Cubs are up to right now. They also, we want to talk about some projections for next season. So the Cubs, a team that last season barely missed the playoffs. A team finished 83-79, second in the division. Like I said, just missed that 7th seed in the wild card. Kind of take a step back in a time where a lot of teams in their division and in the NL kind of took a step forward. We're talking about, especially in their division, the St. Louis Cardinals had a miserable season last year. They really felt the loss of Yadier Molina when he left. And they went out and they went and got some pitching. They did a really good job with, I guess you would call the bargain bin pitching. The Pirates and the Reds, both super young teams with some potential. The Reds especially, they called up a lot of young guys, and they all kind of hit a little bit last season. We'll see how they continue to develop. Same thing with the Pirates. And then the Brewers just are what the Brewers are. They're a good team. They lost a couple big pieces, but they are what they are. So heading into a season where you don't have a lot of changes made, where you haven't made these big moves that you were targeting, and the rest of the teams in your division have, it's a little bit disappointing. Now, the Cubs weren't a team that were in position to make that huge move, to overpay, to outbid the Dodgers on Shohei Ohtani. They weren't really in a position to do that. But what they were in a position to do was, talk about maybe make some smaller moves, some moves that'll keep them in contention, maybe push them forward. Obviously, bringing back Cody Bellinger, that was a big question for them, and they came back and they did that today, 3 years, $80 million. But the lack of moves in the offseason is kind of uninspiring. I expect them to take a small step back. 83 wins last year. I'm probably putting their win total somewhere around 80, 70, 78 to 80 wins. Again, that division is going to be a lot tougher. You're not going to be able to beat up as much on some of those teams that you play all the time. That's a couple games lost. And out of everyone in that division, the Cubs might have had one of the weaker off seasons. They really didn't get a lot done. And for a team that was where they were last season, assuming that they would like to continue competing, it's not a good look. It really is just a disappointing offseason for them. So, I'd love to hear what you guys think about the Chicago Cubs, what's coming up for them. I think they're going to miss the playoffs. I think it's going to be really similar to last season. Like I said, they didn't make too many changes. They brought back the big piece that they lost. So, not sure exactly how much this is going to change. The rest of that division got better, and they just kind of sat on their hands. Didn't get a lot done. But they could compete for a wild card. That's their ceiling. Their ceiling is a wild card. I don't think they're winning their division. There's a lot of good teams there. But they could compete for a wild card, and once you get in the playoffs, you can make noise with anyone. Just got to get hot at the right time. But the Cubs offseason has not been very good. Obviously, bringing back Cody Bellinger is huge. He's going to hopefully provide that bat. And that's the real question with Cody Bellinger, which is why I understand why he hadn't been signed yet. There obviously were a bunch of Scott Boras clients that had not been signed, and Cody Bellinger was one of those four. And he made it all the way through free agency. Through free agency, spring training has already started, and I'm sure he's been working. But with how inconsistent he's been in prior seasons, with how he went from winning an MVP to being benched to being on the Cubs and turning it around, we don't know exactly what he's going to be. We've seen this before where people ball out on their contract year. They go get that big money and then they fall off a cliff. It happens in every sport. There's a whole bunch of examples. I'm sure you guys can think of some. But the $80 million over 3 years really isn't as much as people were expecting him to get. He was looking at getting a six-figure contract. Getting into the triple digits of millions. I guess that'd be 9 figures. But $80 million, not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. So hopefully he can continue his stretch, but that really is the big question. If he can go back and be what he was last season or his MVP season, this is absolutely worth it. But once we get the Cody Bellinger of the couple years before this year, $80 million is a lot to sink into him. But yeah, moving on, in our next segment, we're going to be talking about the Rookie of the Year race between Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. We'll talk a little bit about where that race stands. We'll talk about the history of it, and what we expect, or what I expect to happen in that race. And then we'll close out our show talking about the NFL running back market. There's been a whole bunch of rumors coming out about franchise tag being used or not being used on a lot of running backs. It kind of mirrors last season, so we'll do some comparison there, talk a little bit about it. Thank you everybody so much for tuning into this segment. We will be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sitting through that break. If you are just tuning into the show, in the first couple segments, we covered the Cubs offseason, what they look like for the 2024 season. We talked about the NCAA court storming debate, talked a little bit about the incident in Wake Forest versus Duke, and what we thought was the correct response to this. But in this segment, we are going to do a little bit of NBA talk about the two stud rookies this year, Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. Talk a little bit about the Rookie of the Year race, exactly, how it's going to go, what it's looking like, the history between these two, and this award, how it's changed hands throughout the season. But remember, if you would like to be a bigger part of the show, all you need to do is go to streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. You can have your message scroll across the bottom of the screen there. We'll have a little chat about it, whatever you said. Again, that's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. We appreciate anything you can give, and we appreciate you sticking around for this show. Like I said, in this segment, we'll be covering the Rookie of the Year race in the NBA. And this is between Victor Wembanyama, the Frenchman, 7'5", number one overall pick with all the hype coming into the season, and Chet Holmgren, who was drafted last season out of Gonzaga and was hurt before the season starts. So he is a rookie this season, as he never suited up for the Thunder in 2023. So looking at this, obviously that right there is a point of contention that I've heard. Now, obviously the rules are the rules, and he is a rookie. We've seen this in the past with guys like Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, who both missed time or, missed entire seasons and had their rookie years pushed back or cut short. Ben Simmons is the most recent example of something like this. a very similar race, actually, between him and Donovan Mitchell, in which he ended up winning. But we're looking at this year's race between Chet and Wemby. And obviously, when you hear that, if you are just a casual fan, you're going to look and say it's Wemby, no doubt. Victor Wembanyama, absolutely. All that hype around him, he's going to be the next. He's going to be the next. Look at his tools. 7'5", can shoot threes, can handle, and he is all that. If you watch him play, he is incredible. He, in just the last week or so, has put up a triple-double, with one of those double stats being blocks. He has put up a 5x5. A 5x5, for those who do not know, is when you have 5 different stats happen at least 5 times. Points, assists, rebounds, blocks, steals. 5x5. It only is the 23rd time in NBA history that someone has done it. And it's really, really tough to do stuff like that. Watching him play, making highlight play after highlight play every night, his defense is incredible to watch. It's so much fun watching him and how long he is. There was a clip from, I believe, last night where he poked the ball away, lost it. Guy he's defending is 3 feet behind him, wide open to the basket, and he just reaches out his arm and blocks it. Effortlessly. He takes up so much space on the floor. Defensively, offensively, it's really hard to get around him. Even if he doesn't block your shot, he's making it tough. It's really impressive to see defense like that being played in the NBA today, because it's so tough to play defense in the NBA today. But on the other end, Chet Holmgren is nothing to scoff at what he's done this season. He's been, for a little while, he was the favorite when Victor Wembanyama was struggling and the Spurs weren't getting him the ball as much. But last night, he became the first player in NBA history to get 150 blocks, 100 threes, and 150 steals in one season. First time in NBA history that has ever happened. And you have to be a certain kind of player to even have that be possible. We were talking about how Victor Wembanyama changes the game by being so long on defense and being so effective from the floor, not just in the short range, but also being incredible from 3. And then you see, not steals, assists, 150 assists. But you see guys like Chet and Wemby, and it's crazy that they came in together, because they are kind of two sides of the same coin. Chet might be a little bit better offensively or shooting, but what Wemby can do defensively absolutely makes up for it. And that's not to say anything on Chet's defense, because he is very impressive on the defensive end as well. It's hard. Again, he is a shot disruptor. He can block your shot if you get too close, because he is also a 7-foot, very long NBA player. And it's not like he is one of those 7-foot guys like a Taco Fall that doesn't have movement. That's what makes these guys special. It makes them different. And makes this such an interesting race, to me at least. You have two guys that are kind of changing how the NBA is played. You have the kind of epitome of this stretch the floor when you have 7-footers that are shooting threes with the efficiency of a point guard, and then locking down on defense on the other end. The movement, the ability to move at 7 feet tall for both of those guys really is incredible. It really is one of those things that is just awesome to watch. And when they go up against each other, it's a lot of fun. Now, in the beginning of the season, obviously Wemby was the betting favorite after all the hype he received coming overseas, but he kind of started slow. He kind of started a little bit slow. Wasn't exactly his fault. There was a lot of factors there. The Spurs were struggling, and they weren't really making him the center of the offense. In fact, he wasn't even playing center. He was playing the 4. And then he moved over to center, and he started dominating like we've been seeing in recent games. Now, on the other side, Chet started the season off strong. The Thunder started off the season really strong. They are a top 4 seed in the West right now, and having him as kind of a second star next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, having both of those guys really come into their own at the same time. Very impressive, very good for that team. And he started off the season hot. So hot that he took over the Rookie of the Year race. Now, they ended up playing each other, the Spurs and the Thunder, about a month ago at this point, and that's where it switched. This is when Victor Wembanyama really declared that he was there, and he is ready for the league, and the league is not ready for him. He absolutely dominated Chet Holmgren when they were on the court together, and it seemed like he really wanted to play against him. If you go back and you watch some clips, he kept going at him. It was Victor Wembanyama kept going after Chet Holmgren every single time. He wanted to take him on one-on-one, and it's really good to see competitiveness like that out of NBA players, because we talk about a lot of the time how NBA players don't care about the regular season. And obviously, it's a little bit of a different situation when we're talking about these two guys that don't quite like each other going against each other here. But to see that passion in any regular season game is something that's really good for the league, especially with some young stars like those two, that hopefully will see a lot of success, both of them. That being said, I think this award has always been Victor Wembanyama's award. All the hype that he got pre-draft and the way that he's backing it up in season, there's almost no chance that he loses this award. But the fact that it even is or was a conversation at one point is very impressive. The main reason I wanted to talk about this is not because I think Chet Holmgren is going to win Rookie of the Year, but I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to give some recognition to him. Give some recognition to a guy that, you only have a chance at this award once. It's the rarest award in sports. You only get one shot. You get 1,000,000 shots at MVP, but you only get one shot at being Rookie of the Year, and only one person can take it. And sometimes it leads to a lot of snubs and forgotten wonderful rookie seasons, incredible rookie seasons. Carmelo when LeBron came in. There's so many, we just talked about another example earlier, Donovan Mitchell, when Ben Simmons won it. There's so many examples of great rookie seasons not being awarded, and this is another example of it. These two are going to play for a long time, hopefully. These two are going to face each other a lot of times. And this kind of rivalry that can start from, this kind of race really is important for the game of basketball. As much as basketball is fun to watch, it's a lot of drama. And that's why it's so much fun to cover. Because there's just so much drama in the league. There's so much going on at all times, and it doesn't always have to do with on the court. There's so much beef and so much animosity in the game, and it really drives it. It does, because there's only so many players that can make it up there. It's the most exclusive sport. Only the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1% get into the NBA. And it really is, really is an exciting thing to watch. Victor Wembanyama, 99% will win Rookie of the Year. But keep an eye out for when they play, because that's must watch television when they match up. But moving on, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think about these two incredible rookies, who you think's going to win Rookie of the Year. I'd love to hear that from you. But in our next segment, our final segment, we are going to delve into the wild world of NFL running backs. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk in the last couple of seasons about the value of running backs, about the huge franchise tag fight there was last year with running backs, and we are right back in the thick of it with a lot of those same guys, a lot of those same names. So if you stick around, we're going to break down all of that. I appreciate you sticking around. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sitting through that break. If you are just tuning in, you missed a good show. We started off talking about the NCAA court storming debate, talked a little bit about on both sides about it, what my thoughts were on it. We then went into some talk about the Chicago Cubs offseason and their look ahead to next season as part of our MLB offseason files episode 3. And we just finished talking about the Rookie of the Year race between Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. And in this segment, we're going to finish off our show with a bang by talking about the NFL running back markets. There's been a bunch of news coming out about that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you would like to be an even bigger part of the show, all you need to do is go to streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. Again, you leave a message with a tip, it'll scroll across the screen. We'll have a little bit of a discussion. You'll be an even bigger part of the show than you already are by watching. Again, that link is streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. We appreciate everything you give, and we appreciate you guys just for watching. But let's get right into it. Obviously, the first big news of the NFL free agency, the first big stage of it, it has started yesterday, or a couple days ago, but the first big piece of it started yesterday with the franchise tag. T. Higgins was officially franchise tagged yesterday, and it opened up more conversations about the franchise tag. We talked a little bit about the franchise tag about a week ago, as the window was opening up. But a lot of news came out specifically about running backs and the franchise tag. If you remember back to last season, 3 big name running backs all got franchise tagged or partially franchise tagged in Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard. All 3 of those guys, they got franchise tagged 1-year deals, and none of them were happy about it. Every single one of them had some kind of holdout or some kind of I won't sign your franchise tag moment all last season. And teams, and this obviously goes back to teams not paying running backs. And this is an ongoing conversation from last year. But there's been a couple guys that got paid. You know, Jonathan Taylor ended up getting paid mid-season. And that kind of fixed all his issues with the Colts. That's the big name that's missing from this round from last season. But Saquon, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard have all been against the franchise tag, and it looks like they're not going to get franchise tag this season. It came out today from league sources that all 3, the Giants, the Raiders, and the Cowboys, are most likely not going to use their franchise tag on those guys. And this means a couple different things for each of them. It means different things for all of them, actually. For Josh Jacobs, it means that they're working towards a long-term deal with him. And that's been reported, that's been stated, that's out there. Josh Jacobs is looking to get a long-term contract from the Raiders, and the Raiders are looking to give him that long-term contract. As for Saquon Barkley and Tony Pollard, and it's a little bit different situations for both of them, but it kind of signals that they won't be back with their teams, especially for Saquon. It's been no secret he hasn't been happy with the Giants front office lack of giving him money, lack of giving him that contract, lack of working with him to give him that contract that he thinks he deserves, and they just cannot agree on a number. And it coming out in a report that they're not going to franchise tag only seems to strengthen the reports that he does not want anything to do with the Giants anymore. Which really sucks as a Giants fan, because he's very good at football, and it would suck to see him leave. But not franchise tagging him, first of all, franchise tagging him would only make him angrier. So if they can work a long-term deal with him, that would be wonderful. But especially for him, I don't see it in the cards. I don't see Saquon Barkley donning the big blue again next season. Now that obviously might change as more stuff goes out. They've got more time to negotiate. But is the running back market going to be bigger than it was last season? Obviously, we saw Jonathan Taylor, get paid last season. We saw him get paid in the middle of the year, and it kind of quieted the talks about the running back market in specific. How big that of a story that was last year. It's kind of funny how this year is mirroring last year so closely, obviously with Justin Fields and with now this running back market being a lot of the same names and a lot of the same issues. And obviously, again, that Justin Fields debate, which is the story right now. But we're looking at where these guys might go. And it's not just these guys. Derrick Henry is on the market as well. He is one of those few running backs that did make it through his second contract and now is back on the market. So there's a lot of big running backs out there for teams to sign. Teams like the Ravens have been in conversation for a lot of these running backs. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley have both been linked to them. But as for Tony Pollard, him not getting that franchise tag, it kind of signals a little bit of a different thing. Because he's a little younger than these guys. And having him coming off the disappointing season that he had last year, he's probably not going to fetch that huge contract, which means the Cowboys might be able to re-sign him. I'm not sure if he's the top priority for a Cowboys team that lost in devastating fashion in the playoffs yet again for what feels like the millionth time in a row. But Tony Pollard not being franchise tag, I feel like doesn't signal the end for him in Dallas. It's really interesting how all three of these guys not being tagged means different things. It might not mean a long-term contract like it does in Josh Jacobs' situation, and it might not mean that he's leaving. But like Saquon seemingly is. But if I had to throw some darts at a board and do some prognostication about where these guys are going, I think Pollard will stay with the Cowboys, albeit on a smaller deal. He won't get that tag, but it won't be as much money as the tag. And Saquon, he could go a lot of places. He's very good at football. I want to reiterate that. Very good. I'd love to have him back on the Giants, but I think a team like the Ravens, which has been in a lot of conversations for him, either him or Derrick Henry, are most likely going to go to the Ravens, a team that is had a lot of injury concerns in that running back room. J.K. Dobbins getting hurt 2 years in a row, having Gus Edwards and Justice Hill and Mitchell lead the charge last year. It's a crowded running back room, but I think it's more likely that Derrick Henry goes in there. He's a little older. He's not quite the same as he was in his prime, but he's still really good. Getting in there, he might be able to go there for cheap, go to a winner, see what happens. And Saquon over there, he's going to fetch a little bit of a bigger contract by some team. There's some teams that could use a running back, and the real question is, are they going to pony up the cash to go get a guy like Saquon Barkley? He's, in my opinion, the big fish of the running back free agents. We talked about Dallas with Tony Pollard, but I wouldn't be too surprised if they paid Saquon Barkley some money and he went over there. The Giants obviously need a running back. Coming back there is not out of the question, but it's going to take a lot. So we're looking at a lot of different possibilities here, but they aren't getting franchise tagged, which I'm not sure if that's a step up or a step down for the running backs. The good news is that they're not getting the franchise tag is kind of a disrespectful thing to a lot of players. They're saying, you're stuck here. We want you, and you might not want to be here, but we want you here. Which, it's not always a bad thing. You do get that $14 or $12 million guaranteed to you, which is a nice little paycheck for one season. But we'll have to see exactly how this plays out in the future. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I appreciate everybody tuning in and watching. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, with another great show for you. I appreciate everybody tuning in and staying with us. You guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna